everyone. This is Greg Drevenstedt, Editor-in-Chief at Rider Magazine, and your host for the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. Our guest today is Paul Pelland. Known as Longhaulpaul, Mr. Pelland is a long-distance motorcycle rider who has been a top 10 finisher in the Iron Butt Rally. Paul was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and in 2012, he began documenting a 1 million mile journey called Chasing the Cure for Multiple Sclerosis. Paul, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Greg. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Well, you're a guy who gets around. I know you've completed 2 Iron Butt rallies, once on a Ural sidecar, which is pretty amazing to me. I've only put a few miles on a Ural, and I thought that thing was quite a handful. I know you completed the Iron Butt rally again in 2003 and finished in the top 10. How did you get into long distance motorcycle riding?
Well, actually, I started riding motorcycles probably about the time I was just getting through college. I was about 20 years old when I got my first motorcycle. But I just rode a couple miles here and there, or a nice sunny day, go out for a ride with a friend or something. But it wasn't until a few years later that I started riding longer distances, and actually what got me into the long distance stuff was a bad marriage, and just going home after work and not enjoying myself at home. I'd go in the garage and tinker, and then I would just start taking the bike for a ride. And as the marriage got worse, the rides got longer. And I'd find myself in Chicago and having to turn around and get back to work in New Hampshire for 8 o'clock in the morning. So really, long distance riding became part of basically therapy for me when things weren't going well in life. I found that getting on the motorcycle was just it was a tool, a tool that took me away from everything that was crappy in my life. And by the time I turned around and went back home to face everything, I just felt better and able to handle what was going to happen the next day. So really became a big part of my life through I went through a pretty nasty divorce and custody issues and things like that. And, things got pretty crazy. And so, I had to up my game. And that's when I started doing the long distance events and entering the rallies and the endurance competitions and things like that. And, so it really was hardship in life that actually drove me to get on the bike and discover the what I call moto medicine, the therapeutic use of riding a motorcycle. So,
sure. I mean, I can certainly relate to the when you're on a motorcycle in your helmet, you can really sort of be lost in your own thoughts. You can scream and yell. You can sing songs. You can do whatever you want, and it is a great way to escape, even if it's just temporarily. So I can certainly relate to that. So, well, again, to go from these long sort of therapeutic rides to deciding to compete in something like the Iron Butt Rally that's typically over 1,000 miles a day for 11 days. How did you start to prepare yourself or your motorcycle or your body for those kinds of day after day of I mean, most people have not done a single saddle sore, so to do essentially 11 in a row is quite a commitment.
Well, I think my longer rides, and at the time, I was self-employed. I ran a small business, so I was working 6 days a week. So, Sunday was my time, and Sunday was basically riding, early in the morning until late at night. And I just found that, I wanted to do it more. And so I began to plan what little vacations I took. I had read about the rally. I had read about Ron Ayer's book. Really drove me to learn more about the long distance community. And it's funny, we're talking about this in about an hour. I don't know what year this is, what running of the Iron Butt. The Iron Butt Rally actually starts this morning in Provo, Utah. And also today is Ride to Work Day. So this is awesome. I work from home, so I'm not sure if I'm supposed to just do a loop around my neighborhood or I got home yesterday from a 6,500-mile ride, so I qualify for riding to work.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the back to the question. I think it was the Ironman rally, the '99 rally had just taken place, and I read Ron Ayer's book, and then I realized that there was a slightly smaller rally called the Butt Light, which was run out of Minnesota by the great Eddie James, and it was the same type of rally where you're hunting for bonuses all across the United States, but it was only 7 days long, and I figured I could take off the 7 days and a couple of days on either end. 2 weeks, away from the business was bad, but I could handle it, and so I signed up for it, and that was my first taste of the long distance ride, long distance competitions, and it was great. I mean, I bought a BMW K bike. I had it all outfitted with everything that I read about. I had never entered even like a 12-hour rally or a 24-hour rally. This was my first. I had done one saddle sore before this. So, but what was amazing is, you're in the rally about a year before it happens. So you're preparing your bike, you're preparing your, everything. You buy underwear thinking about what's going to work best for, day 4 of the rally. So it kept my mind busy. It kept me completely involved in that whole thing, and it kept me from dwelling on the crap that was going on in my life. So I loved it. To me, it was fun. I didn't really care if I won or placed well. I thought it would be a great experience, and it was. I mean, I had a great time. Halfway through the rally, I ended up trading my BMW, which the transmission blew apart somewhere in Montana, I believe. I traded it for a Honda Hurricane, just on a Friday afternoon of Labor Day weekend, and just I don't care what's the difference in price. Here you go, and jumped on the Hurricane, strapped my BMW luggage all the way up the back seat, and I finished the rally, and most people said, well, most people would have just quit or flew home and had the bike fixed or whatever. And I'm like, nope, I'm just dropping this bike here. I'm getting another bike, and I'm gonna finish.
Good for you.
And it was great. I mean, I got the bug, and the following year was the Iron Butt. So Iron Butt runs every 2 years. So I had put in my name, and at this time there was a couple thousand people that would try to get into the Iron Butt. It was pretty difficult to get a starting position, and I was a nobody. I had one little rally under my name, and I didn't, so I didn't get picked, and I knew I had to ride the rally. I knew I had to be in that event. I just felt like it was something I really needed in my life. And so I wrote Mike Kneebone, who was the president of the Iron Butt Association. I said, look, I know you guys are always looking for oddball bikes or antiques or something. I said, I'd be willing to ride the biggest piece of crap motorcycle ever made if you let me in the rally. I says, and I had looked at a couple of different bikes, and I said, geez, I'll ride one of these Russian Urals. They're not really known for their dependability or speed or, and they at the time, I don't even know if it was email or regular mail, but they responded and said, we think you're an idiot, but you're in the rally. At the time, I didn't own a Ural. I had never even seen one in person. I'd probably seen them in, Rider Magazine and a couple of the other magazines that I used to get, but I had never seen one. So I ended up buying a used solo model without the sidecar.
Okay.
And I contacted Ural America at the time, and I said, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm entering your bike in the world's toughest motorcycle competition. I said, I'm going to, in the Iron Butt. And, could you sponsor me? Could you help me? Could you, and the president of the company at the time sent me back an email, and it said, we're sorry, Paul, but nobody in our office thinks our bike can finish.
At least they're honest.
So yeah, I mean, so I was kind of on my own, and I ended up purchasing a used bike, and I had it, I had the engine, polished and ported and blueprinted, and titanium valves, and I had it. It would go pretty well. I mean, it was going pretty good. Unfortunately, as a precursor to the Iron Butt, I had entered a 24-hour rally or a 36-hour rally in West Virginia, or on the East Coast anyway. And I pushed the bike pretty hard, and I ended up seizing the motor right before the finish. And by this time, this was May, and then the rally was in July or August that year. So, and now I had quite a bit of the Ural people call themselves foil heads, so BMW has their oil heads, and so the foil heads, they were all following me and, paying attention to what was going on. And so at this time I contacted Ural America again, and I said, look, I'm stuck. I really need some help, and so they said, all right, we'll sponsor you, just don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
so
sure.
They didn't want anybody to know that, in case something happened or whatever. But and I ended up getting the first, at the time the Urals were 650s, and so at the time they were just introducing the new 750, or it was a secret actually. They were EPA testing the 750, which had and this is 2001, so it had electronic ignition, and it had an electric starter. So it was huge, plus the 750 motor, a great big improvement. So they're like, you're not going to have any problems, it'll run at those speeds. And I didn't run the sidecar. I ran just the solo bike.
Okay.
And I didn't have a lot of time to really prep it for Iron Butt. I mean, I put a fuel tank on it. I did put a deeper oil pump because it only holds 2 quarts. I think I put a 4-quart oil sump and pump on it, and a couple other little things, but I didn't really get to do a lot. And test rode it a couple of times here and there, and rode it down to I put it in the back of a pickup truck to get it down to the rally. And of course, everybody's making fun of me, and I'm riding a Ural, and I remember rally his guys with brand new BMWs and Goldwings, and they've got $20,000 worth of electronics and lights and all this stuff, and I'm running tube tires and a headlight that you have to rank on the throttle just to get it to be bright enough to see in front of you. So yeah, it was. But you know what? I had a blast just getting there, and I had every intention of doing well and finishing. I thought I had it down pat. I knew the bike. I knew it's a pretty simple bike to work on. So it's I had everything I needed with me. I thought big hammer, some duct tape, and JB Weld. I mean, what else do you need? And we took off, and I was all happy flying down the road. I got 400 miles before I seized the engine. Both pistons seized in the cylinders, and that was the first of about 40 breakdowns. I got towed to a Ural dealer who at the time the Ural dealers were these fly by night. They had a real job during the day, and you go to their garage in the backyard, and they have some catalogs of Urals that you can look at. But the guy in Tennessee actually had his own personal Ural, and he had agreed to take the motor out of his bike and put it into my bike so I could keep going in the rally. So I had a borrowed motor. That got me a little bit further. Halfway through the next day, the steering head bearing pretty much fell out of the bike, and I went into a tank slapper, and I slid down the highway in Arkansas, crashed the bike. Ended up, actually, it was an Arkansas state trooper that put me back on the road. He basically said, what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I'm probably going to fly home, call it a day. He says, well, why don't you see if you can fix it? And he stayed there with me for an hour while I duct tape, JB welded big hole in the crankcase, and duct tape the windshield and straighten the handlebars. And he was there a good long time before I tried to start the bike. It did start, but it had no oil in it. The oil was all over the road. So I asked him if he could call a tow truck to maybe just bring us some oil to the highway. That's all I needed, a couple quarts of 2050, and we're good to go. And he comes back after about 5 minutes from the squad car, and I said, did you find somebody? He says, no, they wanted too much money. And I said, I don't think you understand. I mean, I'd pay $200 right now. I don't have an option. He says, don't worry. He says, I called my wife at home. She's going to meet us up here in the highway with 2 quarts of oil for you. So incredible, and it's amazing because at the time you don't realize how amazing the story becomes. But the last 25 years of riding, I ride alone pretty much everywhere I go, and I've never had an issue where I didn't find some stranger who wanted to help me, and it's great. There's the world out there isn't quite as bad as the press would have us believe. So so that was day one of the rally. I blew the engine. I crashed on the highway. The night before the crash, I'd spent 4 hours kickstarting the bike because it wouldn't run very well when it was warmed up. So it was that was day one of an 11-day rally, and I ended up breaking down, like I said, I don't know, 30, 40 times, towed 2 or 3 times. But each time I, made my way a little bit further, showed up at the checkpoint in Washington State where Ural was going to basically do an oil change and, tighten up the bike. And they ended up putting another 750cc motor in my bike. The only other one that was in the United States was now in my bike. And that was great. I thought, geez, I've got a brand new bike. I can start looking for bonuses and, start playing the rally game. Halfway through the next day, the starter, now I have a starter because I didn't have a starter with the borrowed motor. So I have a starter, but it kept getting jammed in the flywheels. I have to take it apart, bang the pinions back into so I couldn't use the starter. And then by this time, I don't know, day 6, 7, anytime I started to hear some funny noises, I would say, all right, I got to stop and find out what it is before it gets worse. So a little bit of jingling noise, and it turned out I had what I thought was a bent push rod. So I'm in a dirt parking lot in Wyoming, and I call the Ural headquarters, and I say, hey, look, I've got a problem. I says, I'm spinning the push rod, and it's oblong. I can see it, in an oval. It's going in an oval, and so the Russian technician says, no problem. He says, find the rock, bang straight on with a hammer. So, I mean, I always follow the factory recommended procedures. So, unfortunately, I pulled the push rod out, and it was broken in 2 pieces. There was a metal tip, an aluminum shaft, and the metal tip had cracked, and it was in 2 pieces. And I'm in a dirt parking lot in Wyoming, and so I look in my bag of tricks, and I says, well, what have I got to lose? So I pull out the JB weld, and I JB welded the push rod back together. I put it back in the engine. I started it up, and it was running on both cylinders. So I very gently took off with a glued together push rod. It got me 50 miles. I got 50 miles almost into the next town before it clearly broke again. And, when you've got like 14 horsepower to start with, when you cut that in half, it wasn't very good. So I'm, tooling along at 20 miles an hour, but I eventually make it into a little town in Wyoming. And it was a Sunday night, I think. And the next morning, I get into the hardware store, and I ended up buying a couple of long drill bits. And I saw a grinder in the back room. I begged the clerk to let me use the grinder. I ended up making 2 new push rods out of drill bits. Wow. And threw those in the motor, and I made it the rest of the rally. A couple smaller, alternator issues and things like that, but pretty much finished the rally on drill bit push rods. Oh man! So that was to me at the time was I just didn't want to walk home, and I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have, the means to do anything else. So it was just, getting through the rally, me against the machine or whatever. But today, 20, well, that was 20 years ago this year, actually. So today, that story of overcoming obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, but also riding a machine that nobody thought was worth the entry. I took away somebody's spot that could have actually won, right? So that story today, I use that story today because now I travel the country as a patient advocate for multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed myself in 2005, but I travel the country speaking to patients, and I use this Ural story to explain to audiences, what it's like to live with a disability, or what it's like to live with, a body that doesn't quite do the things that you want it to do. Chronic conditions and things like that. It's like riding that Ural. And, just because you have a disability, just because you're riding the biggest piece of crap motorcycle ever made, doesn't mean you don't deserve a chance to still ride through life. And you can still finish. You don't have to be, in first place to still be a winner, and I use that story millions of times all over the country in various forms, because it's crazy. And anybody, if they don't know about motorcycles, can still understand, taking a Model A and putting it in the Indy 500. You just don't do that.
Right.
So the story is really relevant with different audiences. And, I had no idea at the time that it would be so important in my life now. It also helps me on those days when I don't think I can get through, or, I need to push a little bit further. I just remember that story, and it's like, if I could do it then, I can do it now, and it's
I mean,
I don't know.
that truly is a testament to perseverance and just creativity and problem solving. And it's that there's very few problems are without some sort of solution or a workaround or something. So yeah, that's quite a tale. I didn't realize that was it was all that was involved in your story of the first Iron Butt rally that you finished.
Well, it's funny.
So go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, it's funny because everybody remembers me entering the 2001 Iron Butt on the Ural.
Right.
But nobody remembers 2 years later when I rode a BMW and I came in top 10. Nobody even remembers that because it was boring. Nothing happened, It's funny because that comes up all the time. And I'm like, no, I actually did well. They don't care. Nobody cares.
Well, and that's the thing is that it's the triumph over tragedy, overcoming adversity. That's a much more interesting story than, if you finish the rally and you don't have any, I mean, it's always a challenge to finish that rally, but people have different levels of challenge. So you finished the 2003 rally in the top 10. 2 years later, you're diagnosed with MS. So, and then it was 2012 that you started your million-mile journey. Tell us how you kind of got from A to B there.
Sure. So actually the 2003 rally, I was right in the middle of the start of my divorce and custody issues. And so again, that rally was very therapeutic for me. Partway through the rally, my attorney had called me and told me that I had just won full custody of my children, which was a big ordeal. I kind of knew that my rallying would be over, which was fine because I felt I had done some great things with motorcycles and I was going to raise 2 boys. And that it was also the rally that I felt I had pushed my body beyond limits, that normal limits, and I'd really been pushing. But about halfway through the rally, I showed up at one of the checkpoints and I was a wreck. I didn't know what was going on. Both my arms were numb from my elbows down. I was having trouble speaking. I was having trouble. I couldn't recall where I was the whole day before. I mean, literally the rally staff looked at me and said, go to your room. Don't even show up for the mandatory meeting tonight. You're done until tomorrow morning, and maybe we'll let you ride again. I was a mess. And the next day I had trouble. I couldn't figure out a bonus. I was just literally I was reading Greek on the paper. I just couldn't understand. And I just chalked it up to the pushing too hard. I chalked it up to the emotional stress from the divorce stuff and everything. But it turns out that that was actually my first MS attack, was during the rally. Because my body was stressed and everything else, that's when it hit me. I didn't find out until, when I finally got my diagnosis, was, almost 2 years later. But that was my first attack. And actually that was my last ever endurance competition. I quit riding. I knew I had 2 boys to raise, but I also knew that there was something wrong with me. My hands didn't work, and I had a lot of confusion issues and memory, cognitive problems. I couldn't remember my own home address or people's names, things like that. So it was a stressful time. And so I sold the bikes and I gave up riding. I said, especially once I got the diagnosis, I said, well, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. My life's over. I better get my ducks in a row. I sold my business. I got remarried just for the insurance. No, I'm just kidding. Don't tell me what. No, I made a lot of changes in my life thinking that I would be disabled, that I was going to be that MS patient that, died or whatever. And I went on treatment for the disease, which is a disease modifying treatment, which basically slows down the progression. And basically, I went 8 years and I didn't get any worse. And that's when I realized that maybe I wasn't going to be in a wheelchair, that maybe I needed to find something to, occupy my brain again. And also, I wanted to do something to give back to people who were newly diagnosed. And I wanted to give back to the MS community in some way. And I thought, well, geez, I'll do a long distance ride or something to try to get back, or I'll ride 100,000 miles in a year and try to raise money. And a couple of people talked me out of it, and they said, well, that's great. What are you going to do the following year? And that's like, well, geez, I can't. And so they said, you need like a 10-year plan. You need some kind of, goal that you can use, a continual goal. And I had gone to an MS event where a speaker would talk, and a doctor was asked a question about when he thought that there'd be a cure for MS. And he said, I think a cure for MS is 1,000,000 miles away. And at the time, a few riders had just completed their 1,000,000-mile, documented 1,000,000 miles. And I was just thinking about it. I said, geez, I could ride 1,000,000 miles for MS and just, document going to MS events, document going to fundraisers or anywhere that where I'm raising awareness or raising funds for MS, and count those up and try to get to 1,000,000 miles. And I don't have to tell anybody when I think I'll finish. There's no end date. It's just, so that was it. And I just came up with the idea that I was going to ride 1,000,000 miles, start at zero, and just, try to document 1,000,000 miles, helping people with MS. And like, it's been 9 years. The first couple of years, I just started going to these MS patient events across the country. Excuse me. Going to these patient events across the country where they'll have a patient advocate speak and talk about their story. And so I would go to these events after work and things like that. And eventually a couple of the companies asked me to be one of their speakers. And I says, well, geez, I don't have a story, And then I realized it was the motorcycling and how finding something that I love to do in life, riding, and making it more important than my disease is really part of my therapy. Every day I ride that bike, I don't have MS. My symptoms don't bother me and stuff like that. So, that became my story. And for a few years, I traveled the country for a couple of different pharmaceutical companies that paid me to, do a presentation. And I never flew anywhere. I took the bike to every single event. Somebody paid for me to ride from New Hampshire to Anchorage, Alaska, to speak to like 8 people. It was incredible. For the first few years, it was great. And I started doing fundraising. So I was doing different various fundraising events. I have the MS 5000, which I run every year. It's it's 50 days for MS. It's sort of like the MS walk where people sign up, but instead of walking, you ride your motorcycle as many miles as you can through 50 days. And that event has raised, well over $150,000 since I started. I try to do one or two oddball idiot type fundraisers every year or so. I call them, stupid human tricks, but I try to find something interesting that people will go, what the hell are you doing? And here's $20, So I've done 4, quasi world records, or three. I have 3. I'm working on my 4th. In the next month, I'll hopefully set my 4th world record. But they're fun, but they're fundraisers. I've raised a total of $250,000 so far for charities. I now ride for one charity that puts on a nonprofit that puts on MS events, educational events all across the country. And they do have me speak at a lot of their events. So they're helping me. And but I've been raising money for them for the past 2 years, I think. And I'm still getting to travel. COVID was a little tough. Most of the events were all canceled. Even I do also presentations, like I'll be speaking at the first 3 IMS shows. I do seminars, on travel and also on how to repair stuff on the road. I've gotten pretty good at it. Things that I carry with me that keep me from having to call a tow truck or that kind of thing. So I try to stay pretty busy. I've got a website and blog and YouTube channel, and trying to grow my audience, which helps me with sponsors and things. And today, it took quite a few years, but I have Yamaha that's been really, they've really stepped up. And after I put 170,000 miles on a Tenere without ever, doing any of the maintenance that's in the book, they started to take notice. And I had a second Tenere 1200. And then a couple of years ago, they were coming out with their brand new luxury touring bike, calling the transcontinental motorcycle. And I said, well, has anybody ridden it across the country yet? And I says, let me be the face of trans, for Yamaha. Let me be the long distance dude, So for the first time in my life, and I've owned, 40 different motorcycles, mostly touring, sport touring, some adventure bikes, but I'd never had a cruiser. I've never had a bike where I could see my own feet in front of me. So I wasn't sure, but they put me on it, and we did some joint press stuff with it, which is really what I'm looking for, is getting some exposure. So, but I put 100,000 miles on that bike in about a year and a half, and I rode the snot out of it. I'm typically not very good about maintenance or taking care of stuff or washing or cleaning or I ride through the winter, I ride through the snow, I get caught in all kinds of weather, and I don't have a choice because I'm supposed to be somewhere, and it's it's work, it's business. So they had given me the venture, and then I saw that the new Tenere 700 was coming out, and I really like the adventure style bike, and going from a almost $30,000 touring bike to a $10,000 mid-size, adventure bike, and I wasn't sure that it would work for the amount of hours and miles that I put on at freeway speeds. I drive everywhere like it's Nevada, so
Sure.
I'm a little tough on smaller bikes, but I've had it now. I've had it about a year, and I love it. I mean, I can take it anywhere. I just got back from New Hampshire to Los Angeles and back to New Hampshire, 6 days,
Wow.
6,500 miles, and I was there for a 3 or 4 hour meeting, and I'm ready to go out again. I mean, it's just I enjoy it. I love riding. I've set the bike up for touring, and that's one thing that people think they have to have a $30,000 full dresser to actually, go across the country or even across state lines. and you don't, you just need a few little things to make the bike a little more comfortable. And you can take pretty much any bike you want and ride it, long distances. So that'll be one of the seminars I'll be doing this year at the IMS shows, is about, taking a inexpensive, smaller bike, but using it for cross-country touring. Because I think a lot of people, don't realize what you can do to a bike to make it a bike. Most people think it's just a dirt bike, the T7, and then, that thing cruises just fine at pretty much any speed you want. So
have you had any issue with too tight tires, putting those kinds of, highway miles on it?
Well, so the two things that I was a little bit worried about were tube tires and a chain drive. And I don't think I've had a chain on a bike for 20 years.
Right.
I've never had a long distance bike that I use for with a chain. So I was a little worried about it. So the first thing I did was I put one of these tubeless kits on the bike, thinking, I'll be able to plug a tire from the side of the road. I know how to use a plug gun. Well, that didn't go very well because I took a long trip, and I probably had a slow leak in the rim, and I didn't pay attention to it until it was a blowout. And fixing a blowout on the side of the road, I ended up probably melting the glue that was holding the tubeless kit together, because I was using COVID-19 hand cleaner to spoon on the, because I had a big jug of it. My wife made sure I left the house with a big jug of COVID protection cream, or whatever you want to call it. So I used that as lube to get the tire,
It's got alcohol in it.
Yeah, so it melts. So I got another 50 miles, and I had another blowout. And then I had a tube with me, because things go bad, you can throw a tube in. So I throw a tube in, and it was the wrong size tube, but it worked. I figured it's going to get me to where I'm going. Well, I ride 1,000 miles a day, so it didn't quite get me 1,000 miles. So I blow the tube out with the valve stem ripped right off the tube. I can't fix this. So side of the road, it's hot, So anyway, long story short, before I got home, I ordered a set of real tubeless rims for it. So I have those on now. It just, for the amount of miles that I do, it just makes sense. And I'm not a big off-road guy. I'll go down gravel and dirt and stuff, but I'm loaded for travel. And
well, in highway speeds, it just heats up the tubes. It's just, that's not really what they're designed for. I mean, so that is one of the challenges with certain motorcycles, is that, spoked wheels, depending on the bike. I mean, it can be a Triumph Bonneville, it can be a KLR 650, it can be whatever. Tubes can be a challenge for people, and chains as well. They require more maintenance than shaft drive or something like that, or belt drive. So.
Yeah, the chain was the same thing. The same trip, I ended up melting a chain, or stretching it so far that I had no adjustment left. But it was my own fault. I put a chain oiler on it, and I set it and forgot it. And every time I'd look, I'd see so much oil down there. I kept turning off the chain oiler, lowering it. Well, the chain oiler had popped the hose, and the hose was just leaking all over the side of the bike and not on the chain. So I dried out the chain, not even knowing it. So that's partly my issue, and partly is actually the cognitive problems that I have. I have a bad blowout where I almost kill myself, and then 10 minutes later I'm on the highway doing 85, not even thinking about what just happened. My memory is not really good. So at the end of the day, to oil the chain and check this and that, I'm not the best person. So the chain, that's still a work in progress. I was probably the first non-BMW rider to order that new Regina lifetime chain, and lifetime of that chain, I'll tell you right now, is 12,000 miles. With no oiling and no adjusting, it'll go 12,000 miles before it stretches so much that you're bucking on the highway. And so that's probably not the fix either. So I think if I just a little more diligent with oiling it at the end of the day, especially if it's 1,000-mile day, just to get it up in the center stand and throw some oil on there. And I'll be okay. I think I think I was a little over worried about it and maybe over adjusting it. And so I'm working on that. But other than that, I added a little bit of extra fuel. I got a custom seat. Bill Mayer makes my seats, and so that's a little taller windshield. Some heated grips and things like that. But pretty much I've got myself a great touring bike, and it's short money, and people can really do a lot of traveling. I think I just hit. This is like my worst year ever, but I think I just hit 44,000 miles for the year on the T7. I'm probably supposed to change the oil or something by now. I don't know.
So you mentioned that, I know this is true across the board, is a lot of events were canceled last year due to COVID. Some schedules have changed, like Marricade is typically the first week of June. It got moved to late September. IMS is, usually indoor events. Now they're doing these outdoor events. I know they moved their Southern California event would have been, like the second weekend of July. It got moved to November. So are you still going to these IMS outdoors events coming up? I know I've met you at some events in the past. So, you work you'll be in the Yamaha booth or somewhere else, speaking or there with your bike with all the dirt and the miles on it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have planned to go to every single one. I think there's 9, maybe
9,
10, all the way up to like the end of November, even, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be in a couple of weeks. I'll be heading out to the Sonoma show, and I am speaking. So my Tenere will probably be in the Yamaha booth.
Okay.
And hopefully my chopper will be at the outdoor. What is it? Adventure Out. I think it's called Adventure Out. Yeah. In fact, you guys, I think Ryder's sponsoring
Exactly.
Adventure Out,
Yeah. So I'll see you there.
I'm
Yeah.
sure
We'll be there.
We'll probably have lunch.
Yeah. So tell me about your chopper. What you.
So I spend a lot of time on the road alone. I don't listen to music, but I have a lot of great ideas. And I have a lot of dumb ideas, and sometimes they overlap. A lot of things. I record a lot of stuff as I'm riding because, like, I forget half the things that I'm thinking about. But for a couple of years, I've had this idea of attempting a endurance ride or a long distance challenge ride, but using a chopper. Because a chopper is probably the least style bike that you would choose to try to set an endurance competition or ride on. So I don't have a chopper. I've never ridden a chopper. I don't know anything about choppers, but I said, how about I do the Ironbird has a ride called a 50cc. And basically you document riding from the East Coast to the West Coast or vice versa. And you have to complete it in 50 hours. And you have to have certification and all the paperwork to prove you did it. And then they give you a certificate. So I had contacted them and I said, hey, has anybody done the 50cc on a chopper? And they looked through all the records and stuff and they say, nope, we don't have anybody who's done that on a chopper. And I said, good. I said, so if I do it on a chopper, will I be the first person to ever ride the 50cc? And they said, yes, you would be the first person. So, I talked to Yamaha about it, and right now Yamaha's basically their cruisers is the Yamaha Bolt, and it's a 950cc and small statured cruiser. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this for charity. I said, any chance you guys have a Bolt I could borrow or have, or and they said, yeah. I said, well, we'll help you out. We'll give you. So they gave me a Bolt, and right out of the crate. And the past 7 or 8 months, I've been trying to build it into a chopper. Which during a pandemic, trying to get custom parts for a Japanese bike. If it was a Harley, probably be pretty easy finding 12-inch longer forks and things like that. But I've had amazing hell of a time trying to get parts. And so I wasn't advertising yet that I was doing this, because if I can't build a chopper, I don't want to tell people to donate to my fundraiser. So it's been a little struggle. It's only been the last month maybe that I've got the bike to the point where I say it's a chopper. You know, it's got a raked front end. I paid a lot of money for a custom raked front end, triple trees, couple inch longer forks. It's got, you know, straight pipes and a seat, basically a pad bolted to the frame. It's going to have a big sissy bar, and it's a chopper. You know, it's
Nice.
got took off all the lights and mirrors and turned, you know, got everything, basically anything for safety or comfort is gone, and it's a chopper. So right now it's actually, I'm having a custom tank made, so it's got a little bit bigger fuel capacity.
Sure.
Because I don't know what speed I can ride this thing. I haven't even ridden it more than 2 miles. So, but I'm gonna get on it in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm gonna ride it all the way to San Diego, and which is 2,300 miles. And I'm going to do it in 50 hours. And I'm asking people to donate towards my stupidity. And actually, the bike will be raffled off afterwards. So everybody who donates gets a chance at the raffle ticket. And of course, it's, you know, it's all for MS. And I could care less really about the accolades of being the first person to ride a chopper at a 50cc. It's silly, but it's, you know, I mean, it isn't easy. It's, you know, there's no fairing, there's no,
Yeah.
you know, it's no picnic, but it's for charity. You know, it's to raise money and to raise awareness of what I'm doing, and my goal of 1 million miles for MS, chasing the cure. You know, is what my tagline is. My 1 million miles chasing the cure, but it's fun. You know, I enjoy it. It gets people involved. I've got a lot of people that have donated time, parts, money. You know, I called up Aerostitch. I know you had Andy on recently, and one of my favorite people in the motorcycle industry. I make a phone call, and whatever I need or want, he's been right there with helping me out, never asking for anything in return, you know, but I mean, I tell you, I wear their stuff because it works.
Absolutely.
It has to work every single day. I carry 3 pairs of electric heated gloves with me through the winter, but I only carry 1 jacket, you know? So, but I had called him. I said, hey, I'm going to ride a chopper. And I think that, I think I should be wearing, you know, leather and a chopper, right? You know? So he's like, hey, you know, we have the transit suit. You want a transit suit? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool, you know? So, he offered to donate. We're waiting, hopefully, all those ships that got stuck in the canal there. I think some of his stuff got stuck, and I'm not sure I'll get it in time, but he was more than willing to give me whatever I needed for, you know, to help out. They've been great, and, you know, great company, great guy. Bridgestone tires, same thing. And Yamaha, you know, Yamaha's really stepped up. I mean, they feed me at every event I go to. They take care of me. They've donated the last 2 bikes, you know, for me. They just donated the Bolt. You know, it goes to the charity, not me, but you
Yeah.
know, they're helping me and what I'm doing. And you know, they're not using me for, you know, promoting everything and whatever. They're doing it because they care about the sport and they care about what I'm doing, and that's awesome. I just
Yeah.
you know, the whole motorcycle community really is I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without their help. IMS, you know, they're asking me to speak, and you know, that type of thing. So it helps. You know, I ride full time. You know, this is what I do. I don't really have a job, but or any steady income, but you know, I'm making it work by doing presentation. I do a lot of clubs. You know, I'll speak at the BMW club or Harley groups and stuff. I've done a lot of their presentations, and you know, we pass the hat for the charity afterwards, and the charity then takes care of my expenses for getting there and stuff like that. So it's you know, it's piecemeal, but I'm making it work. I'm riding for a living, which is awesome. You know, it's great. I'm doing it because I have, you know, I have a disease, but it's allowing me to do everything in life that I want to do, pretty much. I don't know if I've mentioned much about MS, but you know, it is an autoimmune disease of the central nervous system. Basically, my body thinks I have a virus, and it tries to attack it. And what it finds is the myelin sheath, or the insulation in the wiring in my head, basically. So it's chewing away the insulation on the nerves in your brain and spinal cord. And after it's done chewing, it leaves a scar. And multiple sclerosis means multiple scars. So the more scars you have, the worse the disease gets. Each scar is sort of like a bad wiring harness or a bad solder joint, in a wiring harness. And you put your left blinker on and maybe your right blinker goes on or not. Well, that's what happens with MS. I tell my foot to move and my other foot moves, or my foot doesn't move. Very basic, but that's what happens in MS is the damage is all in your brain, but it's affecting every part of your body that it's attached to. So, I've been lucky where my symptoms are manageable, and I've been able to deal with them, and that's great. Not everybody's that lucky. So, that's why I'm out there. My goal is 1,000,000 miles, helping other people get through life with MS or other chronic illnesses and diseases and things that have stopped them from enjoying life. And my message, is just to find something, anything that makes you happy, and try to make that more important than the disease.
That's great. I mean, you had said earlier that, you had essentially stopped riding motorcycles. You had sold your bikes and went for a few years and thought that maybe that part of your life was over, but then, you were able to get into some treatment and stabilize your condition. And then you're riding full time. I mean, you weren't riding full time before you knew you had MS. And that's a real testament to, your perseverance. That I know you've got a mission that you believe in. You've got, the support of the motorcycling community, which is a great thing about, there's Ride for Kids, there's Toys for Tots, there's, the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride was just recently, and like there's a lot of different things that bring motorcyclists together for a good cause. So it's been an honor and a pleasure to meet you in person at several events. I'll see you at IMS, probably at a couple of those shows coming up. And if people want to meet Paul in person, yeah, go to one of these IMS shows. You can go to motorcycleshows.com, look up the schedule. Like I said, there's 9, I think, shows around the country between July and November. So,
yeah, I'm looking forward to the shows. They're new. They have to make changes, and they're going to be outdoors, and there's going to be a lot of new activity, and should be good. I mean, I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So, hey, you've been very generous with your time. Is there anything else you want to share with listeners? We'll make sure and have links to your website and anything like that, so folks can reach out to you. Is there anything else you want to share with folks before we wrap up?
No, just that I really appreciate the time, and it really helps me getting the word out there, and letting people know what I'm doing, and ways that they can follow me, and if they want a chance to win my world record chopper, Nut on a Bolt, it's called, Yamaha Bolt. So it's called nutonabolt.com is the website. That's my logo. I'm having fun doing something I love, but I'm also out there making a difference, I hope, and inspiring people to find stuff they love to do. And I think that, I love motorcycling, I love riding, I love everything about it. And, trying to get more people out there to realize how much fun it is, but also how therapeutic it can be. And it really is. It's something though that you need to do more of. If you get out and only ride once or twice, in the summer, it's not the same. I do own a vehicle, even though my license plate says no car. I own a vehicle. I put about 2,000 miles a year on it, but when I get in it, I'm scared to death of it. I don't know how the stuff works. I keep thinking the microwave thing is beeping, but my wife said that's the car seatbelt thing. And I really don't know how to ride a car because I'm not doing it every day. And I think with motorcycling, it's the same thing. I do it so often that I don't think about any of the movements that my body, feet, arms, head, any of it's making. It's just part of me. And I think once you get to that part, when you're riding that much, then it's a totally different experience. People are like, aren't you so afraid of riding? I said, no. I said, I just rode across the country and back. I didn't beat my horn once. Like nobody cut me off. Nobody. And it's because I'm out there so much. And I think that if we can get more people out there realizing how much fun it is, and it's not about the the danger and the risks and all this stuff. It's about having fun. That's the main reason we do it. We don't do it because we're daredevils or have a death wish. It's because we have a wish to live, you know.
Right, right.
Motorcycling is all about that wish to live.
Well, it's like that saying, it's not the number of years in your life, it's the life in your years. I mean, it's a way to really enjoy life. And so that's something that obviously every motorcyclist knows. And it's, the thing about these IMS events, I know they're trying to have more activities for people that are new to riding, to give them an opportunity to have some of the experiences. I know there are demo rides for people that are already, know how to ride a motorcycle, but there are other experiences with electric bicycles and other things that give you a sense of, the propulsion of having a throttle. So I think it's great. That kind of outreach is really important. And well, again, Paul, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you at Sonoma Raceway IMS show. For the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, I'm Greg Drevenstedt. Thanks for listening, and keep the rubber side down. If you've enjoyed listening to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, please subscribe, leave us a positive rating, and tell your friends. We also encourage you to visit ridermagazine.com, where you can get the latest in motorcycle news and reviews and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You can also subscribe to print and digital editions of Rider Magazine, which is published 12 times a year. Thanks again for listening.